Good day, I'm Rocky, and today this video is about hand-hammered flat wire. I learned the process from watching Morten Oen YouTube videos and wanted to share how I do it. In this video, you'll see quite a few fade in and fade out transitions as I try to prevent this from becoming a sequel to Gone with the Wind. So let's get started and take a look at the tools that I use. This is a 25-pound cast iron anvil I got from Harbor Freight. The face of it is not as smooth as I like, so instead of using it, I drape over a non-skid cabinet liner. It keeps things from skidding around, and atop that I put a slick stone block, fold the cabinet liner back again, and then place my actual working steel. This is a flat steel with a very slick working surface I got from Hobby Lobby. I have two hammers that I use. This one is a tack hammer from Home Depot Vapor Supply. I like it because it's light, has a rounded end, and it concentrates the striking power, allowing me to correct small imperfections in the wire. But I don't use this a lot. I use it sparingly and with just a little bit of force. This is my primary tool, a repurposed 16-ounce ball peen hammer. It has a work-hardened face that is very slick and gives me the control that I desire while working the wire. Take note that I stay in the center of the steel. That is a dead spot, what I call a sweet spot in the steel, and gives me the most bang for the buck when striking the wire. If I move to the edge, it starts to ring, which, by the way, staying in the center gives me about 75 decibels noise level, which is relatively quiet. I don't actually strike the wire. I let the hammer do the work by just letting the weight of the hammer fall down onto the wire and flatten it out. The wire I'm using today is 22 gauge Canthal A1, and I'm going to cut a length of it, cut that into two pieces. One single piece round wire I'll set aside for comparison later. This second piece I will take and bend a round handle on one end of it, cover that with painter's tape so that I'll have a handle to hold on to, give me control over the wire, and flip it back and forth from one side to the other as I'm trying to flatten it out. Morten Oen's hammering skills are more refined than mine, so in his videos you'll see him moving the hammer face up and down to control which way it's striking the wire. But for me, I prefer just to flip it back and forth. So much for preparation. Let's grab the hammer and I'll start pounding on this wire and making it angry. While I'm pounding this wire out, pay attention to the right side, the end of the wire, as you're going to see it move up and down as the wire gets stretched on one side. And I also will try to maintain my striking area in the middle of the steel and pull it out and work one small area at a time in small sections, half an inch, 1 inch at a time. Also take note, as I'm working this wire, the left end that I'm pulling out will start to curve. And the farther we progress with flattening this out, the more acute that bend is going to be. Initially with round wire, doesn't bend very much, but as it gets flatter and thinner, it stretches easier and takes a bend more. When I get to the end, I simply flip it over, go back to where I started, and go back to tapping it again in small sections all the way out to the end. This helps maintain consistency through flattening the wire. It keeps it at a more even width and thickness so that when I'm done, I don't end up with little kinks in the wire or spots that would produce a hot spot because it's thinner and has more resistance in that small spot, causing it to heat up and create a hot spot. As I make each pass along this wire, I try to maintain the angle of the hammer striking the wire straight up and down, and also keep an even pace and control the amount of pressure I'm letting the hammer hit the wire with. Essentially, I'm letting the hammer do the work. I just pick it up and let it fall. If I want more force, I pick it up a little bit higher. Now each pass along that wire makes it thinner and also makes it more susceptible to bending. So as we go along and it gets flatter and thinner, it's going to bend more with less force. Also, from time to time, I'll pick up the wire and bend it around back and forth, checking the flexibility. I'm actually checking the thickness of it to see it's getting to where I want it. Okay, let me shut up for a while, let this run silent, and let you concentrate on what's going on and watching the wire. And what you're going to see here is I keep moving it back and forth. I'm going to, at one point, put a huge bend in this thing purposely just so that I can show you how easy it is to straighten out. You see, with a little bit of tenacity and practice, it doesn't take much to straighten out that big bend. Now, let me show you a quick demonstration of the difference in flexibility between the round wire and the flat wire. Now let's turn our attention to the tack hammer, the small hammer. This thing concentrates the force in a small area. You'll see here that it doesn't take much to get this thing to really start bending the wire. But on the same token, it scars the wire. It puts little dents in it that are hard to work out. And in fact, when it gets like this, I use this to correct small places in the wire that are turned at a hard angle. But I'll go back and take the big hammer, because it covers a wider area, and work out those kinks. By hitting them, it'll smooth them out and repair some of that damage, and also allows me to work a bigger area a little bit quicker. And you'll see here, this thing's got a big bend in it again. But I can take that big hammer back to it and start tapping it out from one end to the other and straighten it back out. It may take a couple of passes, but it's not overly difficult to do. You just have to be patient with it, work in small sections, and use a little bit of finesse, if there's such a thing, with a ball-peen hammer. Now, as you watch this short sequence, if you're wondering why I'm working the entire length of the wire instead of just that section that's bent, it's because if I don't work the entire length, then I create two sections of different thickness, and the inconsistency is going to cause problems, or could cause problems, whenever I create a coil out of it. That said, there are times when I will work a small section of the wire to fix a problem without working out the entire length. And the way that I do that is simply ease up on the striking force of the hammer. Hit it harder where it needs to be hit and softer where it doesn't need, because that consistency is what's going to make for a decent coil when I'm finished with this. Alright, let's watch out the rest of this sequence till I get the wire ready for making a coil. This will only take just a couple more minutes. When I'm finished with the wire and got it the way that I want it as far as width, flexibility, then the way I clean it, most of the time it's just with a Scotch pad. Fold it over and pull it through it a few times. It cleans off any gunk that might have gotten on it, any small particles, and polishes it up and gets it ready for glowing, which will anneal the wire and make it soft enough that I can then bend it around a coil jig and not have it bouncing around and being so springy. Remember that piece of round wire about 10 minutes ago? Let's take it and compare it now with what we've made, the flat wire. We'll even up the ends and lay them side by side, and you'll see that the flat wire's not only got wider, but also longer. But the resistance hasn't changed much. Now the flat wire has been hardened through hammering, and it's real springy. So what I will do then afterwards is take a propane torch to it, because it has a decent sized flame, and I will glow it to a dull orange all the way from one end to the other, make about 2 passes. So let's talk about performance now. A couple of months ago, I did this very same thing. Cut one strip of wire off a roll of stainless steel, 26 gauge, flattened one, left the other round. Then I made 2 coils. Both were the same inner diameter, but the round wire turned out to be a 8x7. The flat wire turned out to be a 7x6 wrap in order to get the resistances the same. I then mounted both of them in the same addy in a parallel structure and ran a glow test on it. And what you're going to see here in the next sequence is that testing in slow motion. I did that so that you'll see how they work individually and be able to compare them more accurately. The first glowing on this is from a dead cold start, and you'll see that the flat wire ramps up quicker and also cools down quicker. The second time around, the round wire appears to be catching up, but it's still not completely cooled down, so it's actually giving a head start above the flat wire. But even with that head start, the flat wire quickly catches up to it and still cools down much quicker. This is interesting because doing that is going to save battery life, less stress on the battery for a shorter period of time, and also juice, because you're not boiling off juice after you've left off the switch waiting on the round wire coil to cool down. Now here's the same sequence at full speed. For me, hand-hammered flat wire gives me better performance than a clapton. It has the same coverage, ramps up quicker, cools down quicker, and gives me as good or better flavor and clouds. So once again, there you have it, my perspective on hand-hammered flat wire. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe. There'll be others in the future. And as always, be safe and have a vape day.